This is a shotgun that my great-great-grandfather in the Civil War captured 3 days before the signing of the end of the war at Appomattox.
Some weapons are remembered for how they were used. This one is remembered for who once owned it. This Mortimer shotgun, made in Edinburgh between about 1840 and 1854, would already be a fine sporting gun on its own, with its elegant banknote scroll engraving and the reputation of the Mortimer family, one of the most respected names in 19th century British gunmaking. But its real power lies in its history. The gun is tied to Charles Porter Maddox of the 17th Maine, later of the 1st U.S. sharpshooters, and to the final days of the Civil War, when Union forces captured wagons and personal effects belonging to Confederate General James Longstreet at Sailor's Creek on April 6, 1865. What makes the shotgun extraordinary is the way craftsmanship and provenance meet in one object. As a firearm, it is a beautifully made British double gun. As an artifact, it becomes something much rarer. A documented piece connected to Longstreet, one of Robert E. Lee's most trusted generals, and to one of the last decisive moments before Appomattox. In the end, this is more than a fine shotgun. It is a Civil War relic whose value lives as much in the story it carries as in the steel engraving and wood itself.
We think that very legitimately an auction estimate of $50,000 to $100,000 is conservative. I wouldn't be surprised if in the right setting, because of the provenance, it approached seven figures.
It's fascinating to hear all that, and interesting that collectors would pay that much for it, but
Well,
I'm not surprised.
And I'm not aware of any other directly owned by Longstreet type items that are available.
My husband just received it from his mother, who had inherited from her great-grandfather that was married to the niece.
This rifle feels like a political relic disguised as a luxury firearm. Built in the mid-1850s as a Sharps pistol rifle, it already belonged to one of the most innovative families of American breech-loading arms. But its true distinction lies in the engraving. The quality of the decoration has led experts to suggest the hand of Gustav Jung, the celebrated engraver best known for his work on fine Colts, while the silvered Utah Territory seal the initials TLK for Thomas L. Kane and ADC for Alfred Cumming, tie the gun directly to the crisis of the Utah War of 1857 to 1858. Kane, a lawyer and close ally of the Latter-day Saints, played a key role in easing the transfer of power when President Buchanan replaced Brigham Young with Cumming as territorial governor. What makes the piece extraordinary is that it is both a fine Sharps and a document of a political moment. A standard engraved Sharps pistol rifle is already scarce and desirable, but this one carries a level of historical association that pushes it far beyond decoration. The elaborate seal presentation inscriptions and Mormon history turn it into more than a firearm. It becomes a surviving object from the tense negotiation between federal authority and frontier religion in the American West.
I think that just a Sharps pistol rifle would fetch around $10,000.
Wow.
This gun has been passed down in my family. My aunt gave it to me. It was found by my great-grandparents, her grandparents. They used to buy and remodel homes in the early 1900s in Pennsylvania.
Some family heirlooms survive because they are beautiful. Others survive because they are mysteries. This firearm belongs to the second kind. Marked C. Chapman, it is an exceedingly rare Confederate musketoon from the Civil War era, generally linked to Tennessee, and modeled after the U.S. Model 1841 Mississippi rifle. What makes it remarkable is not polished finish or perfect condition, but the opposite. Its crude construction, short barrel, and worn surfaces reflect the hurried reality of Southern wartime arms production, when weapons had to be made quickly and in very small numbers. Modern references and auction records describe Chapman arms as surviving in only a handful of known examples, with total production often estimated at fewer than 100. That rarity gives the piece its power. The crack's rough stock and hard use do not diminish it in the eyes of collectors. They confirm its authenticity as a battlefield-made object rather than a later fantasy. In the end, this is more than an old gun. It is a scarce fragment of Confederate manufacturing history, preserved not for elegance, but for survival.
At auction, I would think that this gun could easily bring $20,000 to $30,000.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I got this gun from my father-in-law. He obtained it in Germany in 1946. World War II was ending, and they were trying to clean up the area around Munich. So they were going door to door, house to house, and looking for escaping enemy soldiers.
This rifle feels less like a firearm than a piece of royal craftsmanship shaped in wood, silver, and gold. Made in Munich around 1840 by Franz Xaver Bader, who served as court gunsmith to King Ludwig I of Bavaria. It belongs to the tradition of the German shooting rifle, a target arm created not for war, but for prestige, skill, and display. Bader was active in Munich by the 1830s and is documented as Bavarian court gunsmith from 1837, which fits the luxury character of this piece perfectly. What makes it extraordinary is the sheer level of embellishment. The stock is deeply carved. The barrel and furniture are inlaid with silver and key. Key details, including the maker's signature, are picked out in gold. Pieces by Bader are known for exactly this kind of exhibition-level refinement where function and ornament are inseparable. Rather than being built as a military weapon, this was the sort of rifle associated with the cultured shooting clubs of the German states, where marksmanship, craftsmanship, and social status all met in the same object. In the end, this is more than a gun. It is a Bavarian work of art made to be admired as much as fired.
When we think about this gun for a retail price, I believe that this might do $15,000 to $20,000. It's that much difference in the quality. It's a very, very beautiful gun.
Thank you.
It's always been in our family. My dad had it. It was in our house when I was growing up in San Francisco. And when I moved to Colorado in 1996, I brought it out here with me. And so it's been here in Colorado since then.
At the dawn of the American Revolution, a 17-year-old soldier named Jonathan Dustin Cheney stood among the ranks of the 26th Continental Regiment, clutching a personal firearm that would navigate the frost of the siege of Boston and the icy waters of the Delaware River. This smooth-bore military musket, produced in London by the renowned commercial supplier Richard Wilson between 1754 and 1756, originally arrived in the colonies during the French and Indian War. Unlike standard-issue weaponry, historical payroll records from December 1775 confirm that the owner was compensated 6 shillings for providing this private arm, establishing a direct documented link between this artifact and the pivotal Battle of Trenton. The weapon bears the distinct marks of its 18th century origin, including the Wilson engraving on the lock and RW proof marks on the breech. Its physical condition serves as a chronological map of its service. The stock shows repairs where it was broken and mended, and the hammer was refaced during the war to ensure it continued to spark in battle. While components like the ramrod pipes are missing, these period repairs emphasize the musket's status as a working tool of liberty. As a rare survivor of private militia equipment, the musket stands as a tangible bridge to George Washington's daring campaign, representing the individual sacrifice and endurance required to forge a new nation.
So you've got a great gun with a great history. At auction, I would put $15,000 to $20,000 on it, and that's a conservative number.
Wow.
I think it would go higher than that, given the history that's with it.
Okay.
I would put an insurance value on this gun in the $25,000 to $30,000
Wow.
range.
Thank you.
This rifle has been passed through my family for 6 generations. It goes back to my great-great-great-grandfather. It came to me about 12 years ago from a great uncle. I remember seeing this gun when I was 5 or 6 years old.
This rifle feels less like a weapon and more like a work of frontier art. Signed, A Daniels, it is generally attributed to Adam Daniels, a gunsmith active in Lancaster, Pennsylvania in the 1820s to the 1840s, placing it squarely in the rich tradition of the Pennsylvania long rifle. What makes it stand out is not only its age, but its lavish decoration. The barrel wrist and stock are scattered with engraved silver and brass inlays, far more numerous than on most rifles of this type, suggesting it was made for someone willing to pay for beauty as much as function. Auction references for other Daniels rifles also note his highly decorative work and Pennsylvania origin. The most memorable detail is the small mother-of-pearl plaque, worked into the design, forming a fish-like or bird-like figure that gives the rifle an almost personal character. That kind of flourish is rarely seen and helps explain why this example rises above the usual engraved long rifle. Rather than being valued only as a firearm, it belongs to the world of American folk craftsmanship, where metal, wood, and symbolism meet in one object. In the end, this is more than a family rifle. It is a richly ornamented Pennsylvania long rifle that turns practical gunmaking into decorative art.
Well, I would say that at auction, the gun would probably make somewhere between $12,000 to $15,000.
Wow. I never expected it to be of that value, but that's very, very interesting to know, and it's exciting to know.
Tell me what you brought in today.
Flintlock musket that was supposedly used in the Revolutionary War that Ben Franklin made some deal with the French.
Imagine a relic of wood and steel that once echoed with the cries of American independence. This French model 1763/66 flintlock musket is not merely an antique, it is a silent witness to the birth of a nation. Its journey began in French arsenals during a period of dire need for the American colonies. Facing a British arms embargo, the Continental Army relied on high-stakes diplomacy to secure weaponry. In March 1777, the ship Mercury arrived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, carrying nearly 12,000 of these muskets, providing essential firepower for a rebellion nearly out of breath. The Model 1763/66 was a refined instrument of war featuring a 44 3/8" barrel designed for .63 to .64 caliber rounds. This standardization was a military breakthrough, resolving the logistical nightmare of mismatched firearms. The 66 modifications, including a thinned stock and improved hardware, made it ideal for the grueling conditions of long-term campaigns. What elevates this specific piece to a national treasure is the etching on the breech NH 2nd Battalion. This mark identifies it as one of 2,000 guns issued to New Hampshire troops. This weapon likely stood the frozen ground of Valley Forge and witnessed the victory at Yorktown. It remains a testament to the enduring legacy of the struggle for liberty.
I would say at auction, I would put this gun a conservative $10,000 to $15,000.
Ooh. Oh, think of the things I could buy with that.
You certainly made some money on that.
Yeah, for 75 bucks, if I'd put it in the bank, well, I don't think I would have made that much.
As far as I know, this is a model 1777, second model Brown Bess that came from Dover, New Hampshire, with the pouch. And as far as I know, it's pretty much untouched.
How'd you get it?
I saw it hanging on the wall of an older couple, friends of mine, and the pouch was given to me first, and then I purchased the firearm later on.
Nice.
Some weapons carry battle scars. Others carry the full atmosphere of an age. This British pattern 1777 Shortland Brown Bess musket does both. Marked to the 65th Regiment, it belongs to the family of muskets that defined British infantry firepower in the late 18th century, part of the same broad weapon tradition seen throughout the Revolutionary era. Its form identifies it as a Shortland pattern, with the lock and furniture typical of the later Brown Bess style, while the regimental markings on the barrel and wrist plate give it the kind of military identity collectors value most. What makes the group more compelling is that it still includes its military companions. The cartridge box, with space for about 24 cartridges, reflects the standard way soldiers carried paper ammunition in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, while the light infantry bayonet marked Elwush adds another layer of rarity. Together, the musket box and bayonet form more than a military set. They preserve the feel of a British soldier's equipment at the edge of the revolutionary world. In the end, this is not just a Brown Bess. It is a remarkably complete survival of regimental history in wood, steel, brass, and leather.
But we would put an auction estimate on all of it in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. Definitely way more than what you paid for it.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for bringing it in.
Brought a Sharps and Hankins, an old Civil War rifle. This old rifle has got a 32 3/4 inch barrel, and it's got hexagon bore.
Some rifles are valuable because they are rare. This one is memorable because it stands at the very beginning. Made by Sharps and Hankins in 1862. This .52 caliber rifle carries serial number 1. A detail that instantly lifts it above an ordinary Civil War firearm. The company produced about 8,000 guns of this general type, but this example preserves an early long barrel form with a 32 3/4 inch barrel hexagonal bore and special factory engraving that shows it was never just a standard production piece. Its sliding barrel loading system also marks it as part of a brief moment of bold experimentation in American arms design. What makes the rifle especially fascinating is how many ideas are packed into it. The barrel moves forward for loading, and the small lever at the rear is an early functional safety, a feature far ahead of what many long guns offered at the time. Later Sharps designs returned to simpler systems, which makes this model feel like an ambitious detour in firearms history. In the end, this is more than a Civil War-era rifle. It is the first example of a rare Sharps and Hankins variation, where rarity invention and serial number all meet in one gun.
I feel that the gun today would retail for about $10,000. And to me, it's more historically significant than that, but that's where it would bring in today's market.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I brought in a rifle that my grandfather left me about 30 years ago. Dropped it off one Christmas morning, and I was named after him, so as a grandson, I inherited it from him, I guess.
This rifle feels less like a sporting arm and more like a carved monument to wealth taste and marksmanship. Made in Munich in the late 19th century, it is a lavish Schwetzen rifle by Karl Stiegele, one of the noted makers associated with high-grade German target rifles. Built on a Martini-style action and fitted with double-set triggers, it belongs to the world of elite European shooting culture, where rifles were expected not only to perform with precision, but also to display the owner's status through exceptional craftsmanship. What makes this example stand out is the sheer richness of its finish. The stock is covered with deep relief carving and game scenes, while the metal carries fine chiseled decoration with gold and silver inlay. That level of embellishment places it far above an ordinary target rifle. Schwetzen rifles were often custom-made, and the finest examples were created as functional showpieces meant to impress as much as to shoot. In the end, this is not simply a gun. It is a German work of art from the golden age of target shooting.
This one would retail today for about $8,000.
Okay. Nice.
I brought a family heirloom, a Civil War musket that's been passed down for a long time.
This musket carries the look of war and the imprint of a collapsing nation. It is a Richmond rifle musket made at the Confederate Armory in Richmond, Virginia, and dated 1862 on the lock. After Confederate forces seized machinery and tools from Harper's Ferry in 1861, Richmond began producing a simplified version of the U.S. Model 1855 rifle musket for Southern infantry. That history lives in the gun itself. The C.S. Richmond marking the hand-finished character of the metalwork and the use of a brass butt plate instead of iron all reflect the pressures of wartime manufacture when efficiency mattered more than elegance. What makes this example especially compelling is that it falls into the early Richmond pattern, often identified by the medium hump profile on the lock area, and it still retains desirable original features such as its Richmond rear sight and overall untouched condition. These muskets were produced only from the end of 1861 until the fall of Richmond in 1865, and surviving examples with honest wear and strong original parts remain highly sought after. In the end, this is more than a Civil War firearm. It is a direct survivor from the Confederate effort to build an army from captured machinery, limited resources, and urgency.
For insurance purposes, I would probably insure this gun at about $8,000.
Well, I brought in a rifle that I'm pretty sure is from the Civil War era. Been confused about it for a long time. I know Sharps is the manufacturer, and I took it to an antique dealer that was a friend of the family, and I used to cut his lawn for him.
Some rifles look rare. This one feels improbable. Made by Christian Sharps in Hartford, Connecticut in 1856, it is a Sharps Model 1855 slant-breech naval rifle, one of the most unusual offshoots of early Sharps production. While Sharps manufactured well over 100,000 carbines in various forms, this naval version was produced in only a tiny number, which is why it stands apart so sharply today. Its strange proportions, the bayonet bar beneath the barrel, and the hidden door for the Maynard tape primer system, all belong to a brief moment when American firearms design was still experimenting boldly with speed efficiency and military practicality. What makes the rifle so captivating is that its oddness is exactly what proves its importance. the heavy saber bayonet fitting the naval anchor marking and the still-present primer door are details many collectors hope to find because they so often disappear over time. Rather than looking refined, it looks purpose-built, mechanical, and slightly awkward, which is precisely the appeal. In the end, this is not just a Civil War-era gun. It is a rare surviving experiment from the years when Sharps was helping redefine how rifles would be loaded, fired, and carried.
I would say that we would need to insure it for at least $7,500.
All right. Well, I guess I better get on that right away.
It initially belonged to Commodore Thomas McDonough, who is a prominent naval officer in American history. When he was 16, he received a warrant from John Adams.
The history of American naval heroism is often told through legendary figures like Commodore Thomas McDonough, but few artifacts capture his early career as vividly as this 17th-century Turkish gun. Originating from the Ottoman Empire, the weapon serves as a silent witness to the First Barbary War and the daring 1804 raid to destroy the captured USS Philadelphia in Tripoli. This exotic firearm was likely presented to McDonough as a prestigious trophy upon his promotion to first lieutenant, marking a pivotal moment in the golden age of sail. Remarkably, the gun was already over a century old when it reached his hands, making it an antique reward for a modern hero. The firearm features classic Ottoman craftsmanship, characterized by a Michellet lock where the mechanical components are exposed externally. This smoothbore weapon is distinguished by a thick flared buttstock and a tall elevation sight at the rear of the barrel for precision. Intricate inlays of brass and green-dyed bone, which mimic the appearance of jade, adorn the stock, while distinct proof marks on the barrel and lock plate verify its high-status origin. Despite the wear of centuries, the piece remains a masterpiece of Islamic metalwork. It stands as a haunting bridge between the naval power of the young United States and the ancient traditions of the Ottoman world, forever linked to an era of high-seas adventure and daring diplomacy.
Market for this type of Islamic material is very strong. At auction, I would estimate that it would make around $7,000 to $10,000.
Oh my Lord. I absolutely had no idea. That's amazing.
I brought in a Civil War rifle that's been in my family at least since 1912, I believe.
Beneath a century of dust lies a relic that traces the industrial and military evolution of a young nation. This .69 caliber smoothbore musket originated far from the battlefields of the South, forged around 1810 at the Whitney Arms Factory in New Haven, Connecticut. Created by the company of Eli Whitney, the weapon represents an early era of American manufacturing, produced under a specific contract to arm the state of South Carolina decades before the Civil War. The artifact remains in a remarkable attic mint state, retaining an untouched patina that suggests it was stored away immediately after its service ended. Distinctive markings, including the S.O. Carolina stamp and a rare A28 unit design, transform the firearm from a generic military implement into a documented piece of state heritage. Such stamps provide a clear record of the weapon's journey from a northern factory to a southern arsenal. Perhaps the most significant historical feature is the drum-style percussion conversion. Originally a flintlock, the musket was later modified with a crude hand-forged hammer, a hallmark of Southern necessity during the 1860s. This Confederate conversion enabled an aging 1810 firearm to remain functional for the Civil War. It stands as a silent witness to a state forced to innovate with limited resources, serving as a haunting bridge between the early republic and the nation's bloodiest conflict.
Even in this condition, the retail value on this gun would be between $6,000 and $8,000.
What? $6,000 and $8,000?
And I think that's a little conservative.
Wow, I'm amazed, totally amazed.
This is a rifle from my grandfather. He was from Montana. Married a woman from Cincinnati. He was a competitive shooter, and his wife had a friend who had been recently widowed, and she didn't want this in the house along with another gun. She was going to toss them off the bridge into the Ohio River. And my grandfather stepped in and said, "I'll take them off your hands if you don't mind."
This rifle carries the energy of an immigrant America preparing to fight for its new home. Known as a Turner rifle, it belongs to the shooting culture of the German Turnverein, a society's athletic clubs where marksmanship stood beside gymnastics and civic life. When the Civil War began, some of these civilian target rifles were adapted for Union service by adding a side bayonet bar to accept the large Bon Fray saber bayonet, a dramatic feature that turned a sporting arm into something far more martial. Examples like this are closely associated with German-American volunteer units, especially in cities such as Cincinnati and St. Louis. What makes this set especially compelling is its likely Cincinnati origin. The rifle is attributed to Henry Seibert, a German immigrant gunsmith who ran the Buckeye Gun Shop in Cincinnati from 1856 to 1858, while the bayonet is marked to Rudolph Hugg, a Cincinnati cutler whose Turner bayonets are notably scarce. That combination gives the piece unusual historical depth. In the end, this is more than a Civil War firearm. It is a rare trace of the German-American Turners, where community identity target shooting and Union loyalty came together in one remarkable object.
I would put a very conservative auction estimate on this set at between $4,000 and $6,000. The fact that the bayonet is maker marked makes it much more desirable. Hug bayonets are not particularly common.
That's amazing.
A few years ago, the market was a little hotter. Maybe 10 years ago, this would have been $8,000 to $10,000.
I brought this gun that was in my great-great-grandmother's house at the end of the Civil War. That's really all I know about it.
This carbine feels like one of those objects that still carries the dust of history on its surface. Known as a first model Maynard carbine, it was made around 1858 at the moment when American firearms design was experimenting boldly with speed and convenience. Its maker, Edward Maynard, was one of the most inventive gun designers of his time, and this model reflects that spirit perfectly. The most unusual feature is the tape primer system, a clever mechanism inspired by the same idea later seen in toy cap guns, meant to feed ignition automatically as the hammer was cocked. On paper, it was brilliant. In real field use, it proved far less dependable. What makes this example especially appealing is not polish, but survival. The long-range rear sight, the worn but untouched surface, and even the small patch box in the buttstock with its spare nipple all add to the sense that this is a genuine working firearm from the years just before the Civil War. Its serial number falls within the range of guns that could have gone south, though exact records do not survive to prove that with certainty. That uncertainty only adds another layer of intrigue. In the end, this is more than an old carbine. It is an inventive and unusually atmospheric survivor from the tense years when American gun-making was racing ahead of the war to come.
You wouldn't be interested in selling it?
No, absolutely not.
In today's world, this is a gun that I would insure for about $4,000.
Okay. That's great.
This rifle belongs to my husband. He inherited it from his grandfather. And to be honest with you, that's all I know about it.
This rifle marks the moment when American gun-making began to leap ahead of its own time. Built at Harper's Ferry in 1834, it is a U.S. model 1819 Hall rifle, one of the most important early breech-loading military arms in American history. While most soldiers of the period still used flintlock muskets loaded from the muzzle, John H. Hall's design opened at the breech, allowing powder and ball to be loaded faster and with greater efficiency. Even more important, Hall's system helped introduce one of the great ideas of the Industrial Revolution: interchangeable parts. His rifles at Harper's Ferry became a landmark in the shift from hand-fitting to machine-based precision manufacture. What makes this example especially appealing is that it remains in its original flintlock form and still retains its bayonet, a pairing collectors value highly. The visible date 1834 places it in Hall's later production period, when the design was already recognized as a major feat of engineering despite its known flaw of gas escaping at the breech on firing. In the end, this is more than an early rifle. It is a surviving piece of the moment when American manufacturing learned how to make precision on a larger scale.
The bayonet adds at least another $500 to that price. So you've got a $3,000 to $3,500 package here.
Oh, okay.
And you have a great example of American ingenuity and the birth of the American system of interchangeable parts manufacture.
Nice. Well, thank you so much. Well, it'll stay in the family and it'll stay on the wall.
Fantastic.
We're not selling it.
I know it was a rifle of my grandfather's, and I think it was his father's. When I was a kid, he kept it under his bed. When he passed away, I asked for that just because that was kind of special to me.
Some rifles survive as weapons. Others survive as untouched witnesses to a moment when firearms were changing forever. This Star cavalry carbine, made in New York in 1865, belongs to that turning point. Produced by the Star Arms Company, it was a late Civil War, breech-loading carbine built for Union cavalry just as metallic cartridge technology was beginning to replace older muzzle-loading systems. Star had already become known for supplying revolvers to the U.S. military, but this model came too late to shape the war itself. Deliveries began in March 1865, only weeks before the conflict ended, and because only about 5,000 of these cartridge carbines were made, surviving examples in strong original condition are much harder to find than the company's earlier arms. What makes this rifle especially compelling is its state of preservation. Many Star carbines were later sold as surplus, and numbers of Civil War arms went abroad for later service. But a crisp example without heavy later wear feels almost suspended in time. Its appeal lies not in ornament, but in transition, a military arm from the exact moment American gun-making was stepping into the cartridge age. In the end, this is more than a family keepsake. It is a rare surviving fragment of the last chapter of Civil War firearms history.
Somewhere in the $800 to $1,200 range, maybe a little bit more in an auction setting. This is a super crisp gun, and I think that realistically in an auction setting, this gun's going to sell between $2,500 and $3,500.
I got it at an auction. There was some spirited bidding, but I came out on top.
At first glance, the medallion seems to promise a direct link to Buffalo Bill's Wild West, but the rifle itself tells the more certain and arguably more interesting story. This is a Winchester Model 1894, made in 1896, one of the early years of John Browning's famous lever-action design. What sets it apart is not the plaque, whose connection to Buffalo Bill remains unproven, but its factory configuration, a half-octagon barrel paired with a half magazine. a combination widely recognized as a special order feature rather than standard production. That means someone originally asked Winchester to build this rifle to personal specifications, likely with weight and handling in mind. That is what gives the gun its real appeal. Pre-1899 Winchesters are considered antique firearms under U.S. law, and Special Order Model 1894s have long drawn stronger interest than routine factory examples because they reveal the taste of the original buyer as much as the craftsmanship of Winchester itself. The Buffalo Bill plaque may still prove meaningful if documented through factory records or show provenance, but even without that, the rifle already stands as a scarce custom Winchester from the closing years of the 19th century. In the end, this is more than an old lever gun. It is a personalized piece of early Winchester history.
That the gun was part of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, I would say that it would add at least $15,000 to $20,000.
Oh, wow.
But you have a lot of work ahead of you in order to trying to determine that.